I still remember the way the fog moved across the river that night. It wasn't rushing, like the wind had pushed it. No, it drifted in slow, deliberate curls, weaving through the trees like it knew where it was going. The water below me was black, almost mirror-like, reflecting the faint glow of the moon, but the ripples carried shapes that didn't belong to the current. I was alone on the bridge, the wooden boards creaking beneath my boots. No sound of cars, no sound of birds, only the faint hum of the river's voice. It felt alive, whispering under the surface. I should have turned back when I felt the chill at the base of my neck, the feeling that something was already watching me. The silence pressed in tighter than the fog, and the longer I stood there, the more it felt like I wasn't standing on a bridge at all, but on the edge of something far older. Something patient, something waiting. The night was cool. Autumn leaves drifted across the dirt road. I had taken this path dozens of times, but never so late. Never so quiet. The air felt thin. A pale mist clung to the trees, moving only when the branches swayed. Ahead, the old bridge waited, stretched across the narrow creek. Its wooden planks had darkened with rain and time. The rails leaned at odd angles. It had been closed years ago, but no one cared enough to tear it down. I stopped at its edge. The water below barely moved, a sluggish current thick with leaves. I should have turned back, but something in me wanted to cross. The first step groaned. The boards complained with a deep, tired creak. Still, the bridge held. I walked slowly, testing each plank before trusting it. The fog pressed closer. I could see only a few feet ahead, the far end swallowed in pale gray, and then a sound, a second step. Behind me, I froze. The wood went silent. Only the faint hum of insects carried through the night. I turned, expecting to see someone. Maybe another late wanderer, but the road behind me was empty. No lantern, no figure. Only mist. I told myself it was nothing. The bridge had echoed my weight back to me. Old wood plays tricks, so I walked again. One step, then another, and again. Another set followed, slower than mine, measured, almost careful. I stopped. The echo stopped. I held my breath, waiting. The silence thickened, pressing against my chest. I could almost hear it breathing, something standing just beyond the veil of fog, matching my stillness. I moved forward again, quicker now. The footsteps followed. Every board I touched, answered by another behind me. I didn't dare look back this time. Instead, I fixed my eyes on the faint outline of the far railing. It felt miles away. Halfway across, I made a mistake. I stopped suddenly. The echo stopped too, but not at the same time. It lagged, just half a beat late, as if whoever or whatever was behind me hadn't expected me to stop. The air prickled cold. I could see my breath unravel in the mist. The boards beneath me trembled faintly, but I wasn't moving. I whispered without meaning to, "Who's there?" The bridge didn't answer. The fog didn't stir, but I felt it. A weight on the air. Something waiting. With me. I walked again, faster this time. The echoes hurried, stumbling to keep pace. I broke into a run. The bridge screamed under my weight, every plank slapping like a drum. The mist tore past me, curling in desperate swirls. The footsteps behind me didn't stop. They followed, louder, harder, like someone chasing. Closer now, too close. I leapt the last 2 steps and landed on the dirt path. My knees buckled, breath ragged, heart hammering. The footsteps kept going. Not toward me, not away, but on the bridge itself. One after another, the planks shook with invisible weight. Crossing? Without anyone there? I staggered back, staring at the empty bridge. The boards groaned, pressed down by something unseen. The fog thickened, as though shielding it, and then silence. The bridge stood still. No figure emerged. No echo returned. I thought it was over. I thought I was safe. But as I turned to leave, the sound began again. A single step. Behind me, on solid ground this time. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I walked, steady but fast, every nerve alive with the thought that something followed. Through the trees, through the mist, and though the bridge was far behind me now, the footsteps still matched mine. Not perfectly, always. Just half a beat late, I don't cross that bridge anymore. But sometimes, when the nights are still and the fog is low, I hear it, that faint, uneven echo. Waiting. It was late autumn. The air was sharp, holding that faint metallic chill before winter. I stood on the riverbank, where the water moved slow and heavy. Fog drifted low over the surface, clinging to the reeds like pale fingers. That was when I saw it. A lantern, floating alone. It swayed gently in the current, bobbing as if someone had set it down carefully. Its glow stretched thin over the ripples, shivering against the black water. I thought it must have drifted from a festival upstream. One of those paper lanterns, carrying a small flame inside. But when I leaned closer, I froze. There was no candle, no wax, no flame at all. The lantern was empty, and yet it glowed. I felt a pull, something soft but insistent. Like the river wanted me to follow, so I did, step by step, my shoes pressed into the damp soil of the bank. The lantern moved just ahead, never too far, never too close, almost waiting. The fog thickened. I could hear the hush of the current, the low rustling of branches bending above me. And beneath it all, a faint hum. I stopped, holding my breath. The hum shaped itself into words. A voice. It whispered my name. The sound wasn't loud. It was almost tender, but it froze me in place. The lantern rocked gently as if urging me forward. My name again, drifting across the water. No echo, just there. I told myself it was the river playing tricks, the reeds shifting, the fog carrying sounds from far away. But when I crouched down by the edge, my reflection was gone. The lantern glowed, but the water beneath it was empty. I felt a pressure behind me. A weight standing just out of sight. I turned quickly, only fog, and branches reaching low. I kept walking, my steps slower now. The lantern drifted further downstream, but never faded. At times, it seemed to wait at bends in the river. Almost patient, almost kind. I thought of children setting lanterns afloat for wishes, for prayers, for the dead. But this one, it felt different. It didn't belong to me. Another whisper, closer this time. So close I felt it move the small hairs on my neck, my name. Drawn out, thin and fragile, the lantern dimmed for a moment. The glow flickered, but no flame was there to falter. It was as if something unseen breathed inside it. I wanted to stop, but the ground beneath me was softer now, sucking at my shoes. And the trees leaned in tighter, closing me off from the road behind. I realized I was far from where I began. Too far, too deep along the bank. The water ahead widened, spilling into a shallow pool. The lantern slowed, circling gently as if caught in its own reflection. Waiting. I bent down, close enough to see the thin paper walls trembling. But when I reached my hand toward it, the whispers swelled. Not one voice. Many, layered together but speaking only my name. I pulled back. The lantern steadied, its glow pressing against my eyes until they watered. And then I saw it, a face. Inside the lantern, not detailed, not solid. Just the suggestion of features, shifting, pale, moving as if trapped behind thin glass. The mouth formed my name once more, but this time it wasn't a whisper. It was a breath. I stumbled back, heart heavy but slow, like it was sinking inside me. The lantern's glow spread across the pool, painting the fog above it in a dull white. And then, silence. The voices stopped. The air itself felt emptied. Even the river seemed to hush. The lantern dimmed until it was only a pale outline. And then it sank, sliding down into the black water. No ripples spread. No bubbles rose. It was as if it had never been there at all. I stayed frozen on the bank, staring at the stillness. The fog shifted around me, brushing against my face like cloth. I whispered my own name, softly, just to hear a human sound. But the silence swallowed it whole. When I finally turned to leave, the ground felt heavier beneath me. And though I could no longer see the lantern, I could feel its glow following me, somewhere deep in the dark, and when I closed my eyes that night, the last thing I heard was my name. Carried on the river's breath. The river was low that summer. The stones along the bank were exposed, slick with moss. I remember the air being heavy, warm, and still. I would walk there in the evenings, just as the pale light began to fade. The world felt softer by the water, quieter, as if the rest of the town couldn't reach me here. That night, I stopped by the bend. The surface of the river rippled faintly, though the trees around it didn't move. And then I heard it. A hum, soft, like the faint vibration of glass. At first, it was so gentle, I thought it might be the rush of current against stone, but it carried notes. A rise, a fall, almost like a lullaby being carried on the water itself. I stood still, listening. The song threaded through the air, weaving itself between the reeds and the quiet rustle of leaves. I felt my chest loosen, my shoulders sink. It was soothing. I closed my eyes, and that's when I saw them. Faces. Not clear, but pale shapes pressing just beneath the surface. Their mouths moved together, in rhythm with the tune. Eyes closed, as though they too were dreaming. The melody deepened, sweet, aching. I should have stepped back. But instead, I leaned closer, trying to make out the words. They weren't words. It was breath. It was sighs. The sound of something being pulled downward, drawn into the dark below. I opened my eyes. The river was still again, silent. The faces gone. My pulse rang in my ears. I crouched, watching the water closely. Only the faint trickle over the stones. No trace of what I'd seen. I told myself it had been a trick. Shadows. Sleep pulling at me. But I didn't leave. The longer I waited, the more I felt it. A hum inside my chest now, not outside. Like the current had found a way into me. And beneath it, silence, heavy and waiting. The trees leaned closer in the dim. The reeds shivered without wind. And from somewhere deep beneath the black water, the song began again. This time, it wasn't soft. It pressed against my skin, humming through the bones of my arms, my teeth. It wanted me closer. I knew that. I stepped back. The tune shifted just slightly, as though it noticed. As though it was aware of me. I turned away, forcing myself up the slope. But the hum didn't stop. It followed. Low. Curling at the edges of my breath. Riding the air even when I covered my ears. I reached the path. By then, the crickets had gone quiet. The world felt emptied, hollowed out, except for that sound. That aching lullaby that wasn't meant for me, but had still found me. When I looked back once more, I thought I saw it. Just at the center of the current. A figure half risen, half drowned, mouthing the tune in silence. But when I blinked, only ripples. Only the dim, pale light of the river, and silence again. I walked home with the weight of it still inside me. The air thick, heavy with something unspoken. Even now, when I close my eyes, I hear the faint echo, the hum of water, the soft singing of what waits beneath, and the silence it leaves behind when it knows. I'm listening. The dock was older than I remembered. The wood sagged beneath me, swollen with rain, pale with rot. Every step pressed water out of the cracks, dark stains rising like breath from the planks. It was late. Too late for ferries. The river had been closed for years. Still, I wanted to see it. The place where my grandfather once crossed, where he said the water never forgot a face. The fog sat heavy, draped low over the surface. It moved slow, like something alive, rolling in folds across the black current. That was when I saw him. A man, standing at the far edge of the dock, tattered clothes, shoulders bent, as if the weight of the water pulled him forward. He didn't move. Didn't turn, just stared into the dark, as though waiting for something to rise. The air was damp, heavy in my throat. The silence was wide, broken only by the groan of wood beneath my steps. I wanted to call out, ask if he was all right, but my voice caught, something about the stillness of his frame. It felt wrong to disturb it. I blinked, and he was gone. The dock stretched empty before me, but the air hadn't shifted. The place where he stood was darker, damp as if the fog clung thicker there. Then I saw them. Boots. Old leather boots, set neatly at the edge. The tips hung slightly over, dripping into the river below. Strands of riverweed clung to them, slick and green, sliding down in long threads. I froze. The boots were wet, fresh, not abandoned relics, but something taken off only moments ago. The wood beneath them shimmered with a thin sheen of water, as if a body had been standing there and melted into the river. I felt the dock tremble beneath me, though no one else walked it. A pressure in the air, like breath on the back of my neck. The silence thickened. Every ripple of the river seemed to lean closer, listening. I stepped forward against my better judgment, one plank at a time. The dock creaked, deep and tired, as though warning me to turn back. The boots smelled faintly of rot, of river silt, of something left too long beneath the surface. I crouched near them. And the moment I did, the wood groaned harder, flexing beneath my weight. For an instant, I thought I saw a reflection in the water below. Not mine. His face pale, eyes open, drifting just beneath the surface. The current moved around him, but his expression never shifted. He was staring up. Directly at me, I staggered back, breath caught sharp in my throat. The dock rattled, sending small splashes against the posts. But when I looked again, the river was empty. Only my own blurred reflection quivered there. The boots hadn't moved. Still dripping. Still fresh. The fog pressed closer. I could barely see the shore behind me. A sudden thought clawed at me. What if the ferry never stopped running? What if it carried passengers still? Just not the kind that breathe? The river hummed low as if answering. A vibration through the boards, through my shoes, into my bones. I stepped back, but the dock seemed longer now, stretched, as though the shore had pulled away. Each retreating step echoed louder, softer, slower. The boots remained, unshaken. I thought of my grandfather's voice, how he said some people don't return from the river, how the water keeps them, how they wait not for rescue, but for company. I shouldn't have come. The air smelled of wet rope, of rusted iron. The faint toll of a bell drifted over the water, though no ferry moved. And then I felt it, a dampness around my ankles. But the dock was dry. No water had reached me still. My socks clung cold against my skin, heavy as if I had stepped into the current myself. I dared not look down. I hurried back, faster now, every step heavier, as though the wood didn't want to release me. The fog thinned only when my shoes hit soil. The shore rose up behind me like I'd been gone for hours. I turned once more. The dock stretched empty. The boots still stood, waiting at the edge. But they weren't alone. Beside them, a second pair now, small, familiar, shoes that looked like mine, dripping, facing the water. I couldn't breathe. The river was silent again. Calm, patient, I left quickly. But I carry the weight of wet fabric still, a heaviness that won't dry, and sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel the dock beneath me, swaying softly, waiting. The river was calm that night. A pale strip of moon drifted across its surface, breaking apart on the ripples like torn glass. I remember standing at the bank, shoes damp from the grass, flicking stones into the current. The air was cool, still. Even the trees were holding their breath. I leaned down, picked another stone, flat and smooth, and let it glide from my fingertips. It skipped once, twice, then fell. The circles spread out softly across the dark water. That's when I saw it. Not the stone, not the ripples, but something else from the center of the river. Something pale rose through the blackness. A hand, long fingers stretched open, palm facing me, as if waiting to catch something or waiting for me. I froze. The water clung to it in thin threads, dripping between each finger. It didn't splash. It didn't disturb the current. It simply lifted, slow, deliberate, as if the river itself had grown a body and was offering me its skin. I whispered a word. Hello, or maybe it wasn't even a word, just a breath. But the moment sound left me, the hand sank back beneath the surface. Gone. Not a bubble, not a ripple, just gone. I waited. The water shimmered. In the moonlight, it looked calm again, but I couldn't step away. Something in me was waiting too. Another. Stone lay in my palm. I don't remember picking it up, but I flicked it across. The river anyway. 1 skip, 2, 3. Then, silence, and once again, the hand appeared, rising, pale against the black. Fingers open. Palm tilted toward me, like it wanted me closer. My throat tightened. I thought of wading in. Just a step. Just to see how cold it really was. But before I moved, it slipped beneath again. The ripples spread wider this time, slow rings drifting outward. But they didn't fade. They just kept moving, overlapping, stretching further, until the whole river seemed to pulse with them. I stumbled back, but the grass felt heavy beneath my shoes. The earth seemed to lean with the current. I couldn't tell if I was standing still anymore, or if everything around me was shifting. I sat down on the bank, gripping the soil with both hands, and I watched. The moon arched higher. The water kept trembling, circles, folding into circles, but nothing else surfaced. Not a hand, not a fish, not even the reflection of the trees, just those endless ripples. I don't know when my breathing slowed or when the chill settled into my chest, but I stayed there. Through the long hours of night, through the slow crawl of stars. Overhead, waiting for the surface to still, it never did not until the first light of dawn slid across the horizon. Only then, as the sky softened to gray, did the water calm. The ripples melted into stillness. The river looked ordinary again, quiet, empty. I rose to my feet, legs stiff, clothes damp with dew. There was no sign of what I had seen, no proof, only silence. But when I glanced down at my palm, I swear there was something there, a faint wetness, cold, and strangely smooth, as if something had pressed into my hand while I wasn't looking, something that hadn't quite let go. And as I walked away from the river, I couldn't help but feel that it was still waiting, still beneath the surface, still reaching for the next stone, for the next name, for the next hand willing to meet it. The road was barely a road at all, just dirt rutted by years of rain. It clung to the edge of the riverbank, and I followed it slowly. The water below moved dark and wide, though I could hardly see it. Fog drifted upward, pale ribbons caught in the beam of my headlights. The season had shifted overnight, summer warmth falling away. The air was colder, damp with the taste of iron, the kind of cold that sits against your teeth when you breathe. My engine coughed once, a hollow stuttering sound. Then it caught itself again, like something choking back a word it didn't want to say. I told myself it was fine. Old car, old road. But when the lights flickered, for just half a second, my stomach sank in a way I couldn't explain. The mist was thicker there. It curled, alive, as if the river wanted to climb the road with me. That's when I saw it, in the low glow of my headlights. A figure, walking barefoot along the shoulder. The skin of their legs looked pale against the dirt. They moved slowly, head bent, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. I pressed the brakes, careful not to startle them. The tires hissed against wet gravel, and I leaned forward, my voice almost catching in my throat. "Do you need help?" The figure didn't turn, didn't lift its head. It just kept walking, bare feet sinking soundlessly into the earth. The fog folded tighter around them. My headlights pulsed once more, and in that flicker, they were gone. Not ahead. Not to the side, just gone. The road lay empty. Only the ribbon of fog moving across it, and the faint hiss of the river pulling itself downstream. I sat there longer than I should have, hand still resting on the wheel, listening, because something in the silence had changed. The air felt fuller, like a held breath, like someone was waiting for me to speak. But I didn't. I only shifted the car forward, slowly, almost afraid the lights might catch them again. The mist thickened with each bend. The engine sputtered, the sound thinning, like it wanted to die there in the dark, and I wondered if it did. If the car gave out completely, would I step out? Would I feel the wet earth under my own feet and follow the shoulder until I too vanished into the pale? I tightened my grip on the wheel. The road curved closer to the river. I could see the faint gleam of moving water through the fog, black, restless, endless. Then, just beyond the next bend, the headlights brushed against something. Not a person this time, but a shape, a long, pale strip of cloth, caught on a low branch. It fluttered once, as if some invisible hand had let it go a moment too late. I drove past without stopping, but the thought sank in me, heavy, Cloth doesn't end up that way unless someone was already walking here before me. The silence deepened as the road stretched on. No other cars, no signs. Only that empty, faithful path beside the river. My chest grew tight. Not fear exactly, but something quieter. Like being observed. Like the fog itself had eyes. When the engine sputtered again, I pressed my foot harder to the gas. The car lurched forward reluctantly, pulling me through the pale curtain of night. And still, I couldn't shake the image. The figure walking barefoot, head bowed, moving as if led or as if following a sound. I never saw them again. But the longer I drove, the more I felt the weight of footsteps just beyond the reach of my lights, as though the road didn't want me alone. And when the mist finally thinned, and the dirt gave way to asphalt again, I didn't feel relief, only the strange, hollow ache of leaving something unfinished. The river kept moving. The fog stayed behind, and I carried the silence with me, long after the old road was gone. It was late September, the kind of night when the air feels heavy, as though the river itself is holding its breath. I stood at the bank, watching the pale moon stretch across the dark water. The reeds swayed, slow and deliberate, and the current moved against the wind. People in the village spoke of it, the drowned bell. A church swallowed by the river when the old town sank. Some said if the water grew restless, you could hear the bell toll beneath the surface. I never believed them. Not really. But that night, I heard it, a single note, low and deep, not from the air, but from below. It rippled up through the current, shivering in the stones beneath my feet. I froze. The night was quiet. No crickets, no wings above the marsh, only that muffled resonance, the slow toll of something buried, yet alive. I leaned forward. The river gave back nothing but shifting reflections. The moon fractured across its skin like broken glass. Another toll, softer, further away. But I felt it in my chest, my breath misted in the air, and though the night was still, droplets began to cling to my hair, cold, too cold. Like the touch of hands that had never left the water, I stepped closer. The stones beneath my boots slick with moss. The reeds bent as if listening. A third toll, longer, dragging itself through the current like chains pulled underwater. I whispered into the night without meaning to. "Who's there?" The river shifted. Not a wave, not a ripple, but a hollow silence that pressed against my ears as though the world itself had gone under. And then a single drop struck my shoulder. Cold, sharp as ice. I looked up. The branches overhead were bare. The sky was empty, but something unseen lingered there, dripping, drop after drop. It trailed down my arm, sliding against the fabric of my sleeve. Too steady to be rain, too focused. As if something was leaning above me, waiting. The bell tolled again, louder now, almost inside me. The current drew back, pulling against itself, and for a breathless moment I thought I saw it, a shape beneath the surface. Tall, crooked, a steeple leaning at an impossible angle. I blinked and the water smoothed. The reflection broke apart. But the dripping did not stop. My shoulder was soaked, each drop colder than the last. Like the river was reaching down, marking me. The tolls grew irregular, one close, one far away. Some overlapping, like a chorus buried in the silt. I wanted to step back, but my legs refused. The weight of the sound pinned me, and the dripping had reached my collar, sliding down my neck, breath on my skin. But nothing above me but air, I whispered again. But this time I didn't hear my own voice, only a faint reply, not words, just the echo of the bell, answering. The river swelled. Foam edged the reeds. The pale reflection of the moon bent and twisted, and then silence. No toll, no drip. Only the faint rustle of reeds swaying in place. I stood there, trembling, my shoulders still damp. The stones beneath me slick as bone, and though the night returned to its quiet rhythm, I could still feel it, a weight pressing from above. Waiting to fall again, and somewhere beneath the current, the bell still turning, waiting for the next restless night. The river was wide that night, black water stretching into nothing, the kind of stillness that feels older than the land itself. I stepped onto the ferry. The boards bent gently under my weight. There was no captain. No light but a pale lantern tied to the post. The ropes groaned as the boat pulled free, and without anyone at the wheel, we began to drift across. At first it was calm. The air was damp, heavy with fog. Each breath hung in front of me like faint smoke. I tried to listen. For the motor, for the waves, but there was only the faint creak of wood, and the soft lap of water against the hull. I thought maybe the ferryman had gone inside, hidden in a cabin I couldn't see. But when I circled the deck, there was nothing. No wheel, no door, no sign of another soul. Still, the boat kept moving, slow, steady, as if pulled by something unseen. Halfway across, it changed. The ferry shuddered, then slowed. The ropes stretched tight, though nothing held them, and the boat began to turn. Not forward, but around in a slow circle. Once, twice. I leaned over the railing. The water was calm, too calm, like glass. That's when I heard it. A laugh, thin, high, like a child hiding somewhere in the fog. It carried across the water, playful at first, then sharp, like it wasn't meant for joy. My chest tightened. There were no children, not here, not in the middle of the river. I tried to call out, but my voice felt swallowed. The fog pressed closer, thick, damp against my skin. I could barely see the lantern anymore. The laugh came again, this time from behind me. Close, I turned, but there was nothing, only the pale wood of the deck and the endless rolling mist. The ferry drifted in another circle, slower now, like it was caught in a whirlpool I couldn't see. My stomach began to sink. The thought crept in that maybe the boat wasn't stuck at all. Maybe it was choosing. I gripped the railing. The metal was wet, slick beneath my hands. And in that silence, I heard something else. Soft footsteps. On the boards behind me, one, then another. Slow. Bare. I froze. The air was too thick to see more than a few steps ahead. But I felt it. Someone moving just at the edge of my sight. I waited for the next step. But it never came. Only the drip of water from the ropes. Only the faint hum in my ears. And then the laugh again. Right beside me. Sharp. Cold. I turned. But the deck was empty. My breath caught. The lantern flickered once, then went out. Darkness folded in. The kind where you can't tell sky from water. Where every direction feels the same. I pressed my eyes shut. Listening for anything real? A bird, a wave. Even the motor. But there was nothing. The ferry had gone still. No circling. No drift. Just floating in silence. I thought of stepping off. Into the water. Swimming back. But when I leaned over the railing again, I saw something move below. Shapes. Pale. Almost glowing. Hands reaching just under the surface. Hundreds of them. Pushing against the hull. Holding it in place. I stumbled back, my throat tight. But the boat didn't tip. Didn't rock. It felt held. The laughter returned. Not one child this time. Dozens. High and soft, circling me in the dark. I pressed my hands to my ears. But it was inside now, under my skin, filling the hollow places in my chest, and then, as sudden as it had come, it stopped. The fog thinned. The lantern lit itself again. The ferry moved forward. Calm, steady, as if nothing had happened. On the far bank, the dock appeared. Wooden posts rising out of the mist. I staggered off the boat. The planks felt solid beneath me. The air was lighter. Normal. When I turned back, the ferry was already pulling away. Empty. Drifting back into the fog. Back across the river, I never saw who it was carrying, but I heard them. Soft laughter. Fading into the night. And then the river was still again. It was late evening. The river moved quietly beside me, pulling along the last of the day's pale light. The sky was neither dark nor bright, just a gray blur as though it couldn't decide. The air smelled of damp earth and wet leaves. Every step along the path sank into soft mud. And still, I walked. I had taken this route home many times before. The old riverbank path, lined with willows that bent toward the water, branches whispering as they swayed. The town was behind me. The bridge lights far away. No one else around, at least I thought so. Up ahead, A figure appeared on the path, a traveler, coat long enough to brush the ground, a wide hat pulled low over his head. He moved with steady steps, unhurried, almost graceful. I expected him to nod as we passed, the way strangers sometimes do, sharing a quiet acknowledgement. But when I drew closer, something slowed inside me. My body kept moving, yet my chest felt tight. The traveler lifted his head slightly, not enough to greet me, just enough to let me see. There was no face, only pale skin, smooth and unbroken. Where eyes should be, nothing. Where a mouth should rest, only silence, and yet he paused. Turned toward me, as though he saw me somehow. I couldn't breathe. The air seemed to thicken around my throat. He tipped his hat, polite, almost old-fashioned, and then he walked on. The sound of his coat brushing the grass was soft. Too soft, as if the ground bent away from him. I froze, watched him fade into the curve of the path. The willows closed behind him, but the river didn't move the same. Its surface trembled as though something unseen had touched it. I stood there for a long time, listening to my own breath, trying to steady it. When I finally walked again, my steps felt heavier. The path seemed longer, quieter. I told myself it was nothing, just a trick of the dim light, just shadows against skin. But then I noticed something. The mud no longer carried my footprints alone. Beside them, a second trail, deep, precise. Boot prints, set down one after another as if someone walked directly beside me. I stopped. The prints stopped too. I looked around. No one, only the whisper of branches above me, only the faint ripple of the river, but I wasn't alone. I could feel it. I began walking faster. The prints returned, keeping pace. Always at my side, not behind, not ahead. Exactly with me. The sky dimmed to black. Only the faint glow of distant lamps across the water remained. But on my side, the path was swallowed by shadow. Something brushed my sleeve. A shift of air, like someone turning too close. I dared not look. The moment I turned my head, I knew there would be nothing. Nothing I could name. Still, I whispered out loud, "Are you there?" The air felt colder, and in the silence that followed, I thought I heard the faintest breath. Not mine. I walked until the path ended at the edge of town. The cobblestones felt safer beneath my feet, street lamps humming softly overhead. When I glanced back at the riverbank, the prints were gone. Wiped clean, as though no one had ever walked there. I told myself I imagined it. That fear had carried me too far, but when I reached my door, something made me pause. The window by the entrance reflected the dim lamplight, and in that reflection, for a heartbeat, I saw the shape of a man in a long coat, standing just behind me, no face, only smooth skin where eyes should be. I turned quickly. The street was empty. The reflection was gone. Inside, the rooms felt smaller than usual. Walls pressing closer, every mirror, every glass surface. I avoided them because I knew, if I looked too long, I might see him again, not on the street, not in the path along the river, but here, standing close, hat tilted politely, as though waiting for me to acknowledge him. I blew out the single candle I had lit. Darkness folded over me. Still, I could feel it. That faint, impossible presence, as though the traveler had never left. As though he had always been walking beside me, and perhaps he always will. The air was colder on the bridge. Colder than the night around it. I remember pausing halfway across. Leaning on the iron rail, the river below carried a soft hum. Steady, endless, dark water moving like breath. The streetlights stood in a perfect line. Tall, thin, buzzing faintly in the fog. Each one spilling a pale circle onto the asphalt. I was alone. Or I thought I was. My footsteps had stopped echoing, and for the first time, I noticed the first light at the far end flickered just once. A nervous twitch of light. Then another. One pole closer, and another. Each bulb shivered, going dark, one by one, as if something was walking beneath them. Following the trail, closing the distance, I didn't move. Couldn't. My hands pressed to the frozen rail. The metal almost burning my skin. The sequence kept going. Click, dark, click, dark, until the last lamp beside me shivered in its glass. The glow sank, and the bridge fell into silence. Pitch black, the only thing left was the water. Endless rushing below, like whispers rising from the river. I held my breath, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one light snapped back.
Not behind me.
Not in the middle, but far ahead, at the very end of the bridge, a lonely pool of pale light, too far to see clearly, but enough to outline something. A shape, still, standing inside the glow. I thought maybe it was a person, but it was wrong. The height too tall, the outline, bending in ways a body shouldn't. The fog thickened around it, and though it didn't move, I felt its gaze, heavy, pulling. The bridge stretched longer than before. The air colder. Each inhale caught in my throat. I thought of turning back. But the darkness behind me felt heavier than the shape ahead. So I stayed, waiting, watching, listening to the river. The figure tilted. Not like a nod, more like a sway, a slow lean, as though its weight shifted in recognition. And then, the light above it shivered. The bulb inside trembled, and with a sharp pop, it died. Black again, I whispered to myself. I don't know why. Maybe to make sure my voice was still mine. The words broke against the fog, swallowed before they carried. When the silence settled, another light came alive, not at the end, closer, 2 poles nearer, and the figure was there again, standing inside the circle of pale glow. Closer now. Too close. I gripped the rail until my knuckles stung. My breath clouded in the air. But the figure had none. It didn't move. Not once, just waited. The bulb flickered again. And darkness swallowed it whole. Another light came on, closer. The figure inside it again, as if the shadows carried it forward, like the darkness itself. Moved it closer to me. I wanted to run, but the bridge beneath my feet felt endless, each side too far. The water below, whispering louder. Another light went dark. Another glow appeared, the figure stepping closer each time. No footsteps. No sound at all, just silence. And water when it reached the 4th pole away. The light above me twitched. My chest tightened. Every instinct telling me not to look. But I did, and for a breath, I saw it clearly. The shape was not a body, not flesh. It was made of shadow, woven together like smoke held in place. Hollow where a face should be, empty. The bulb cracked, and I was blind again. My heart hit the silence louder than the river. The bridge groaned under the weight of nothing. Then, the last light, right above me, flickered alive. The circle of pale glow landed on the asphalt. Empty. No figure. I was alone again. Or, I wanted to believe. The rail beneath my hand pulsed with cold. The river seemed still for a moment. Too still, I stepped forward. One step, then another. Each one slower. Until I left the pool of light. The bulb above me popped, and darkness returned, but behind me, another light snapped on, as though something else was standing where I had been. I didn't turn. I just kept walking. Each step carrying me further. The bridge stretching longer than it should. The river whispered. The fog closed in, and every light along the bridge followed me one by one. Until I reached the far side, I never saw the figure again. But I still feel its weight. Whenever the streetlights hum, and the darkness waits just beyond the glow, the fog comes earliest in autumn. It hangs heavy over the river. I walk there most nights because the silence feels safer than my apartment walls. The street lamps stop before the bend. From there, it's only the pale glow of water and the drifting mist. That's where I first saw it. A shape, not moving, not walking, just standing, a silhouette in the fog. At first, I thought it was someone fishing, or maybe just another night wanderer like me. But the figure never shifted, never swayed, not even when the wind rippled across the reeds. I kept my distance. 20 feet. Always 20, because whenever I took a step closer, the shape dissolved, like smoke, like it had never been there. Still, the next night it returned. And the night after that, always in the same place, waiting. The weeks grew colder. The river slowed, and yet that shadow always stood just beyond reach. I told myself it was nothing. A trick of fog and light, a tired mind, but something in me began to dread the bend, not the water. Not the woods. Just that single place. That one spot where silence thickened, where the air pressed down harder. One night I stopped. I stared at it. And it stared back. I couldn't see its eyes. Couldn't make out details at all. But I felt its attention. Heavy. Fixed. As if the fog itself leaned closer. I whispered into the air. "Who are you?" The words vanished before they reached the water. No answer. The silence grew colder. Even the crickets seemed to retreat. And then, like before, it faded, as if the fog swallowed it whole. I should have turned back. I should have stopped walking there at night, but each evening something drew me back, the pull of a question that gnawed at me. Was it real? Or was I standing at the edge of some waking dream? Then came the night it didn't fade. I saw it standing there, darker than the mist around it. I waited. I expected it to dissolve, but it didn't. It lingered, solid. I felt my chest tighten. My hands went cold. I took one step backward. And that's when it moved. The figure shifted, not toward the water. Not away from me, but closer. I froze. The fog curled around my ankles. I couldn't breathe. The space between us, 20 feet, shrank to 15. I turned to leave. And my footsteps weren't alone. Soft. Measured. It followed. The air behind me pressed heavy with movement. Each step I took, it echoed. Not loud, not rushed. Just steady. I wanted to run. But running in fog feels like sinking. Every breath caught in my throat. Every sound stretched too thin. The figure never closed the distance. It only kept pace, following, as though it didn't want to reach me, only to remind me I wasn't alone. I broke into the glow of the first street lamp. My chest heaved. The fog thinned in the orange light. When I looked back, nothing. The path was empty. The bend was gone. Only the slow river moving in silence. That night, I locked every window. I checked the corners of every room. But even as I lay awake, I felt it. Not in sight, not in sound, but in the heavy pause before each breath, in the hush that stretched too long. I stopped going to the river. But sometimes, through my apartment glass, I see it. At the farthest reach of the streetlight, a silhouette in the drifting mist of night air, never closer than 20 feet, never gone for long. And when the fog creeps thick against the window, I wonder if distance means anything at all. It was late evening, just after the last streaks of sunlight had slipped behind the trees. The air carried that damp chill of early autumn, the kind that clings to the sleeves and slows your breathing. I found myself walking toward a bridge I had never noticed before. Its frame was narrow, built of stone that looked older than the road itself. Moss crept between each crack. Rust lined the railing like dried blood, flaking when my hand brushed against it. The river below was hidden in fog, its current only guessed at by the faint murmur beneath. At the entrance, a small booth stood tilted to one side. The wood was darkened, shrunken by rain and decades of silence, and in front of it, a tin box, bent, corroded. Its lid dented as if someone had pressed it closed again and again. I knelt and pried it open. Inside lay a single coin, copper, smoothed from use. But when I lifted it, I froze. It was warm, not the warmth of sunlight, not the fading heat of a hand. It pulsed faintly, as though it carried a breath of its own. I turned it over in my palm. The face had been rubbed away, leaving only a faint circle where something once was. Behind me, the trees were quiet. Too quiet, I should have left. I know that, but instead, I placed the coin back inside. The clink echoed longer than it should have. Metal on metal, carried deeper than the hollow box could allow. Then came footsteps, soft, measured, crossing from the far side of the bridge toward me. I straightened, my eyes tracing the span of stone and fog. No one was there. Still, the steps drew closer, one after another, each landing heavy as if pressing into the weight of years. I backed away from the booth, my pulse matching their rhythm. But the bridge remained empty. Only the air moved, curling with pale mist, sliding between the railings like slow smoke. The footsteps reached the toll booth and stopped. Silence stretched wide and waiting. The box rattled, though no hand touched it. The lid creaked open again. The coin inside was gone. My mouth felt dry, my throat tight as though the fog itself was pressing against me. I turned to leave, but when my foot touched the path, a weight tugged at my pocket. I froze and slid my hand inside. The coin, cold now, colder than the air, as though it had been buried in ice. I dropped it instantly, and the metallic ring scattered into the night. But when I looked down, there was nothing at my feet, only dirt. And the damp outline of my boot prints already fading. The bridge behind me hummed, not with voices, but with something lower, like the steady breathing of stone. I forced myself to walk. One step, then another. The booth loomed smaller with distance, but my chest still carried the press of unseen eyes. And in my pocket, though I had emptied it, the weight returned. I didn't dare check again. I just walked faster. The fog thickened, until the trees on either side blurred into shadows. Somewhere far below, water struck against stone, a dull, endless rhythm. When I reached the far end of the bridge, the air grew still, no wind. No river song, just silence. I looked back once. The booth leaned, its box faintly ajar. A faint glow leaked from within, a color I couldn't name. And there, across the span I had just crossed, footsteps returned. This time, moving away from me, each one echoing softer, fading into the fog, until only silence remained. I never touched the coin again. But sometimes at night, when I empty my pockets before sleep, I hear that same hollow clink, as though something unseen is waiting, patiently for the toll, and I wonder how many times I've already paid. The river was quiet that night. September air, cool, damp, heavy with the smell of wet earth. The moon lay low above the trees, and its pale reflection stretched across the water like a thin sheet of glass. I stood on the dock, wrapped in my coat, listening to the soft hum of insects hidden in the reeds. The boards beneath my shoes groaned when I shifted. That's when I saw it. A rowboat. Small, wooden, its paint peeling in gray streaks. It drifted slowly against the current, not pulled downstream, as it should have been, but moving upstream, cutting across the moonlight, quiet as breath. No oars touched the water. No hand guided its weight. It glided steady, deliberate. The reeds at the river's edge rustled as if leaning toward it. I told myself the water's flow had shifted, that the wind was carrying it in some strange illusion. But the air was still. The current was strong. I could see the ripples pulling downstream, and yet the boat slid forward, ignoring it. A pale mist curled low over the surface. It wrapped around the bow like fingers tracing its edges. I felt my chest tighten. The boat's slow approach carried the kind of silence that presses in, as if the night itself was holding its breath. I couldn't look away. It passed under the moonlight, and for a moment, the reflection of its hull seemed darker than shadow, like a gap, a hollow space where water should be. Closer now, the dock creaked again, as though bracing for something. When the boat turned, it made no sound. The river did not lap against its sides. It simply arrived, sliding into the space beside me. The ropes along its edges trailed in the water, heavy and dripping, as if they'd only just been released. I leaned closer, empty. The bench seats inside were bare, slick with water, no lantern, no net, no weight, only the smell, sharp, brackish, like rotting wood soaked too long in silence. And then I saw them, footprints, dark, wet, pressed into the dock. They began at the edge, exactly where the boat now rested. Not faint marks, but fresh. The plank still glistened where water had seeped into the grain. I felt the air catch in my throat. The prints were bare, human. The toes spread slightly, the arches pale against the moonlight. They trailed across the boards, leading forward. Past where I stood, I hadn't heard a step, not a splash. Not a breath. The night had stayed silent. But someone had climbed out. The boat rocked softly, though no hand touched it. The ripples it left stretched far out into the river, then smoothed, as though swallowed. I listened. The insects had gone quiet. The trees across the water leaned in heavy shadow, unmoving. I followed the line of the footprints with my eyes. They glistened faintly, vanishing into the tall grass at the edge of the dock, each one sharp, as though pressed only seconds before. I stepped back, though I didn't know why. The damp wood beneath me gave off a cold breath, almost as if it remembered. The boat drifted again, nudging softly against the dock, like it wanted me to climb inside. I stayed still. The mist thickened, curling over the riverbank, hiding where the footprints disappeared. It seemed to wait there, quiet, patient. The air was heavy, so heavy it felt like the world was tilting toward the water. I thought about turning, walking back down the dirt path toward the cabins. But something in me stayed rooted, drawn, unwilling to that boat, to the silence it carried upstream. The dock groaned once more, though I hadn't moved, and I knew then, in that pale, breathless stillness. The one who stepped out hadn't gone far. They were still near, listening, watching, waiting in the reeds for the boat to return. And the river, beneath its quiet hum, seemed to whisper that it would not leave alone. The fog was heavy that night. It drifted across the river road in long, pale ribbons. My headlights cut through it, but only barely. The gravel beneath my tires was slick. The trees on either side leaned close, dripping with mist. Every mile felt quieter, more distant. I had lost the last road sign somewhere behind me, and the map on my phone wouldn't load anymore. No signal. Just a blank gray screen. I should have turned back. But there was nowhere to turn. The road was narrow, hemmed in by black water on one side, and forest on the other. Then I saw it, aglow, between the trees. Not white like headlights, not the harsh flicker of a street lamp, but soft, golden, a cabin, wooden, set back just a little from the bend of the road, its windows breathing lamplight into the fog. I slowed the car, rolled down the window, listened. Silence. No crickets, no river rush, just the low hum of the engine, and then movement. A curtain inside shifted. A figure stepped forward. An old woman, her hair pale, almost silver in the lamplight. She raised her hand, slowly, a small wave. My chest loosened with relief. Someone was here. Maybe I could ask for directions. I pulled over. The gravel crunched. The cabin light seemed to grow warmer as I stepped out. The fog pressed against my jacket. I walked toward the door, each step sinking into damp earth. The wood of the porch creaked under my weight. The lamp in the window flickered once and steadied. I knocked. My knuckles against the wood sounded too loud, but almost instantly, the door opened. The cabin was empty. The lamplight still glowed, but the room stretched hollow. No furniture, no woman, only water. A thin layer of river water, pooled across the floorboards, rippling gently as if disturbed just a moment before. I froze. My reflection bent in the surface. The lamplight shimmered in broken lines. I whispered, "Hello." My voice fell flat against the walls. No answer. The cabin smelled faintly of moss, of whetstone, the kind of scent rivers leave behind when they retreat. I took one cautious step inside. The water lapped around my shoes. Cold. Colder than it should have been. Something moved beneath it. A dark ripple passed near my feet and vanished under the boards, as though the river itself flowed beneath the house. I glanced back at the door. The fog pressed against it like a pale curtain. The outside world felt far away now. The lamp in the corner hissed, its glass chimney clouded with moisture. And for just a moment, I saw her again, the old woman, not standing, but reflected in the water, her face pale, her hand still raised in that same slow wave, but the reflection bent and twisted, as if she were beneath the surface. Looking up, I stumbled back. The water rippled violently. When I looked down again, she was gone. Only my own face stared back, distorted, uneasy. The hum of the lamp grew softer, the room darker. I realized the walls of the cabin seemed damp, like they had soaked in the river long ago. A faint dripping echoed from somewhere deeper inside, steady, like footsteps, but slower. I couldn't tell if the sound was in the room or inside my head. I whispered again, but this time, something whispered back. Not words, just the faintest echo, like breath moving across water. My skin prickled. The air felt thin. I backed toward the doorway, but when I reached for the handle, my hand met nothing. The door was gone, behind me. Only fog. It drifted in through the doorway frame, pale and endless. The cabin was no longer anchored to the road. It felt suspended, floating. The water on the floor deepened, slowly, up to my ankles now, cold enough to ache. I saw another ripple move across it, wider, stronger. I whispered again, barely a breath, and the surface answered. The woman's reflection broke across it once more, this time closer, her eyes open wide, her lips parting as though she were about to speak. But no sound came, only silence, and the faint pull. As the water seemed to tug at my feet, I closed my eyes, tried not to move. The hum of the lamp faded into static, and then nothing. When I opened them again, the cabin was gone. I was standing alone on the river road, my shoes wet, the fog curling around me in thick, silent ropes. Behind me, the forest, ahead, the empty road winding deeper into the dark. I turned once more, searching for the glow of the cabin, but there was nothing. Only the pale shimmer of mist against the water. The silence pressed close, and for a moment, I thought I saw her again. Not in a window, not in the water, but standing far out in the fog, her hand, raised, still waving. The river looked the same as it always had. A flat stretch of pale water moving slow, carrying fallen leaves downstream. I came here often. Early mornings in autumn, the air cool, mist floating just above the surface, the kind of place where silence feels heavy, where you can hear your own breathing, and the faint hum of the world waking up. But that morning, there was something else, a rhythm, soft, steady, tick, tick, tick. At first I thought it was only in my head, a trick of the ears caught between the hush of water and the branches swaying. But when I leaned closer, the sound was clearer. It wasn't coming from me. It was coming from the river. I crouched at the edge, damp soil pressing against my shoes. The current swirled quietly, carrying a reflection of pale clouds. And underneath that surface, the ticking. It was too precise to be anything natural, mechanical, a clock buried deep. The more I listened, the more it took hold. Each second sharp, like it was keeping time for something I couldn't see. The river didn't rush or churn. It held itself steady, as if waiting. I remember holding my breath without meaning to, afraid that if I exhaled too loud, I'd miss the next beat. Then it stopped. No ticking, no rhythm. The silence pressed harder than the sound ever had. The water itself stilled, as though someone had laid a hand across it. Every ripple froze into a strange calm. Not even the faintest current moved. That was when I felt it. A shift. Not on the surface, but beneath. Something vast. Something old. Rolling over slowly in the dark, the ground near the bank gave a faint tremor. I reached for a branch to steady myself. The soil felt loose, almost ready to give way, and I knew if I slipped, the water would not welcome me. It would take me. The stillness deepened. Even the birds above had gone quiet. The world was holding its breath with me, I whispered to myself, though I don't know why. Maybe to prove I was still there, still separate from whatever stirred below. I should have left, but I didn't. The river had become a mirror, smooth, dark, endless, and in that mirror, faint shapes shifted, not reflections, not clouds. Something beneath, moving slow. I saw pale glints, like the edges of gears turning, huge wheels grinding against one another, deeper than sight should reach, and with each imagined motion, I felt pressure in my chest, as if the air itself was tightening around me. Then the ticking started again, one beat, another, slower now, tick, tick. Each sound seemed heavier than the last, like the clock was winding down, counting toward something final. I backed away, but the sound didn't soften. It followed, thrumming beneath the soil, the earth itself keeping time. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it was inside me now, each tick pulsing through my ribs, through my teeth, through the space behind my eyes, and then nothing. The final second passed. The clock fell quiet. The silence stretched. I thought it might never break. The river remained still, too still, like glass laid over an endless pit. I waited for another sound, any sound, but there was only absence, as if the world had lost its rhythm altogether. Eventually, I forced myself to turn away, to walk back through the fog, branches snapping softly beneath my steps. Every breath a reminder I was still above ground, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had turned beneath the water was awake now, and that the ticking wasn't just measuring time. It was measuring me, measuring how long I had left. Even now, when I close my eyes, I hear it faintly. Not always, but enough. A hidden clock, somewhere deep below, keeping time where no clock should be, and when it stops again, I know the silence will follow. A silence meant for me. The road was empty that night, a pale stretch of asphalt winding between trees. Midnight. Late summer, though the air carried a strange chill. I had the windows rolled down. The hum of the tires felt louder than usual. Every so often, fog rose from the ditches, curling like smoke. I slowed my car without meaning to. Up ahead, someone was walking. A figure, alone at the edge of the road. White shirt, hands folded loosely at their sides. At first I thought I was imagining it. No one should have been out there. Miles from town, no houses. Just the trees and the river running far beyond them. I pulled closer, headlights washing over the figure. They turned their heads slowly, as if the light didn't bother them at all. Their skin seemed pale, almost colorless. I stopped. The engine idled, rumbling softly. I leaned across and pushed open the passenger door. "Need a ride?" I asked. No answer. Just a faint nod. The figure slipped into the seat without sound. The door shut gently on its own. For a moment we sat there, the silence thick. I kept my eyes forward, shifted the car into gear. The road stretched out, empty again. Only the trees moving past in slow rhythm. The traveler hadn't spoken. Their presence pressed against the quiet like a weight. I tried. "Where are you headed?" My voice felt too loud in the small car. The figure didn't turn. They only raised one pale hand and pointed toward the river, that was all. No words, just that small gesture lingering. Then the hand fell still again. I drove, and with every mile the silence deepened. The clock on the dash glowed a faint green, past midnight. The hum of the tires echoed through the cabin. I told myself not to look, not yet, but curiosity itched at me. I lifted my eyes toward the rearview mirror. The seat was empty. No one there. The belt still hanging loose. The cushion flat and untouched. My throat tightened. I glanced sideways, quick, afraid. The traveler sat quietly in the seat beside me, eyes closed, as if they had never moved. A cold breath spread through the car. The windshield fogged softly from within. I felt it along my skin, as though someone had just exhaled near my ear. I didn't stop. Couldn't. The river road was still ahead, turning gently through the trees. The headlights painted it silver. I thought about pulling over, letting them out. But something held me there. Something that felt both heavy and strangely calm. The traveler's head leaned against the glass now. Their breath fogged a small circle on the window. "Steady, rhythmic," I whispered, though I don't know why. "Are you all right?" The words dissolved. No reply. Only the faint sound of water rushing somewhere close by. The river had drawn near. A bend in the road revealed it. Black surface, shining faintly in the moonlight. The air colder here. A smell of damp earth, of moss and stones. The traveler's hand lifted once more. The pale finger traced the riverbank, following its curve. Then dropped again. Their face unreadable. We passed a small pull-off, nothing more than dirt and weeds. I slowed, almost stopping. But when I glanced back into the mirror again, the seat was empty. This time there was no shape beside me. No pale head resting on the glass. Yet the window still carried the fogged breath. Fresh. Recent. I sat there, hands trembling on the wheel. Engine humming. The river whispering beyond the trees. I wanted to ask something, anything, but the words felt useless, swallowed before they left my mouth. So I drove on, mile after mile. The fog thickened around the road. Shadows pressed in closer. I caught myself glancing at the seat again and again, never sure what I would see. Sometimes the cushion looked weighted just slightly, as if someone had leaned there unseen. Sometimes the glass fogged over in small bursts. Breaths that weren't mine. By the time the bridge appeared, an old iron frame arching over the river, I felt drained. Like the night itself had been pulling me toward this place. I crossed slowly. The water rippled far beneath, moonlight trembling across it. I didn't look to the side. Not until I reached the other bank. When I finally glanced at the passenger window, the fog circle was gone. The glass clean, silent. I drove the rest of the way without stopping. No figure ever reappeared. No pale hand lifted to point again. And yet, in the corner of my vision, I swear the rear-view mirror still carried the faint outline of someone sitting there. Not gone. Not entirely, just waiting. Until the next turn toward the river. The rapids were louder than I remembered. It was late autumn. The trees above the gorge were almost bare, their thin branches clawing against the gray sky. The river below was swollen, rushing fast, foaming white as it slammed against black rock. I had come alone. No one really walks that trail anymore. Too many warnings, too many accidents. The air felt sharp, almost metallic. Every breath carried mist. I pulled my coat tighter, though it didn't help. That's when I heard it, a cry, thin, wavering, like a child calling out over the roar of water. At first I thought I imagined it. The rapids make strange noises, after all. But then it came again. A soft wail carried just enough for me to stop walking. I turned toward the rocks. The water surged violently, dragging branches, dead leaves, scraps of foam. Yet through the chaos, I heard it. That unmistakable sound of a child crying. I moved closer. The stone beneath my boots was slick with spray. Every step left me trembling, though I didn't know why. There, wedged between two jagged boulders at the river's edge, something pale. Not a child. A doll. Its dress was soaked through, clinging tight against its stiff little body. One glassy eye reflected the dim sky, the other cracked. Its hair hung in dripping strands, tangled like river weed. The cries had stopped. I crouched down, my fingers hovering above it. Water surged around the doll's body, tugging at its limbs as if the river wanted it back. I hesitated, and then I heard it. A whisper, so close, as though spoken directly against my ear. "Don't leave me." I froze. My breath caught against the roar of the rapids. No one was there. The trees stood still. The path behind me was empty, yet the whisper clung. It carried a weight. A plea. I looked back at the doll. Its lips seemed parted as though caught mid-word. Its cracked eye glistened with trapped water. I reached out. Just the tips of my fingers brushed against its soaked fabric, and again, "Don't leave me." This time lower, sadder. I pulled my hand back, trembling. The sound wasn't coming from behind me. It wasn't the river. It was the doll. I waited. The water crashed on. The silence that followed the whisper was heavier than the rushing noise around me. It pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. The doll shifted in the current, almost nudging forward as if urging me. Its wet dress clung tighter, dripping steady rivulets down onto the stone. I couldn't move. I wanted to walk away, to leave it there in the river where it belonged. But I couldn't shake the thought. If I left it, I would hear that voice forever. The longer I stood there, the stronger the feeling grew. Not fear, not entirely regret. Something in that voice carried sorrow. Something that begged for more than rescue. It begged for remembrance. I reached down once more. This time I gripped the doll and pulled it free from the rocks. The crying started again. Not from around me, inside me. A sound buried deep, vibrating against my chest like a pulse. I clutched the doll tighter. Its body was cold, far colder than the water should have made it. The dress clung against my wrist like icy skin. I whispered back without thinking, "I won't leave you." The crying stopped. Silence. Only the endless roar of the rapids. I carried it with me up the trail. Each step heavier, The mist clung thick, and I felt eyes behind me, though the path was empty. When I reached the clearing, I looked down. The doll's cracked eye reflected nothing, just pale emptiness. I set it on a mossy stone, letting the air dry its tangled hair. But still I felt the whisper lingering in my ear, soft, patient, waiting. I walked away, but the regret followed. The sound of water rushing in my mind, the weight of that tiny body in my hands. The words wouldn't leave. Don't leave me. And I knew, even far from the river, that I never truly had. The river was calm tonight. Black water, still as glass beneath the stars. I sat alone on the wooden dock. Autumn air pressing soft against my skin. The lantern beside me swayed gently, its flame small. Tired, my line cut into the water. No ripples, just the faint hum of crickets hidden in the reeds. I waited, breathing slow, counting each exhale like it might keep me warm. Then the tug came, sharp, deliberate, as though something below had been waiting for me. I pulled back. The rod bent, groaning in my hands. Water broke with a sudden spray of silver. At first I thought it was only a fish, but its scales. They shimmered, faintly glowing, as though catching light that wasn't there. In my lantern's glow, it looked alive in another way. Its eyes blinked. Not the way fish should. A slow closing, a slow opening, human-like. I froze, rod trembling. The creature thrashed, but not with panic, more like resistance. For a moment, I thought I heard a hum inside my head. Low, steady, almost like the soft rhythm of breath. I leaned closer. Its gills pulsed faintly. Its mouth opened just enough to show rows of tiny, pale teeth. I couldn't keep it. My chest felt heavy, as though holding it would invite something into me. So I leaned down, loosened the hook, and let it slip back into the black water. It didn't swim away quickly. It turned once, circling beneath the dock, glowing faintly, like a coin sinking into deep water, and then it was gone. I sat still, waiting for silence to settle again. But silence never came. Instead, a sound behind me. The shore was gravel, always crunching under a step, but this wasn't crunching. It was splashing. Wet footsteps, slow and steady, moving closer. I turned, lantern trembling in my hand. The bank was empty, only reeds swaying in the night air. Only shadows, but the steps did not stop. Closer, then pausing, then closer again. My breath caught in my throat. The lantern's flame flickered, shrinking. The water lapped at the dock with a rhythm I didn't recognize. I called out once, quietly, just to break the stillness. No answer, only the faint ripple of water around the posts. Then, silence. Total. Even the crickets had gone. I felt the wood shift beneath me, like weight pressing down, something unseen standing just behind my back. I didn't turn again. I couldn't. I kept my eyes on the black water, on the place where the silver fish had vanished, and I listened. To the quiet. To the breath that wasn't mine. The lantern went out. The floods came late that year. Heavy rain, days of it. By the time the river spilled over, most of the fields were already drowned in pale brown water. But when the current slowed, the surface grew still. And that's when I noticed it. Beneath the shallow flood, a shape. Not a field, not the riverbed. A road, smooth, paved, running straight under the water, like it had always been there. I thought at first it was an illusion. Shadows of clouds, maybe broken stone fences. But when the sunlight caught it at an angle, I could see the faded white lines, a hidden highway, buried beneath the flood. At night, the water turned glassy. It reflected the sky. Every star doubled, but through that reflection, something shimmered. Far below, faint beams of light. Headlights, 2 pairs, moving slowly, as if cars were gliding just beneath the current. Silent, their glow bending and breaking against the ripples. I stood at the edge of the bank. The air smelled damp, still. My breath clouded in front of me. I watched the phantom vehicles drift along the sunken road. They didn't sway like shadows in water. They stayed steady, precise, as though the drivers knew the lanes by memory. But when I listened, there was no engine. No tires, only the faint hum of the river. Sometimes, the lights would pause, hovering in one spot, as though waiting. Then they would glide forward again, and always, Always. They vanished into the fog at the bend. The next morning I returned. The water had risen higher overnight. The road was almost gone from sight. But still, beneath the pale green depths, the white lines remained. I tried to follow the curve with my eyes. It seemed to lead deeper into the drowned valley, into places I had never walked. By evening, I couldn't resist. I came back, lantern in hand. The air was cooler. My boots sank into soft mud. The river whispered in slow laps against the reeds. And then, across the water, the lights returned, twin beams. This time brighter, closer. They drifted forward, side by side. I could almost see the outline of the vehicles behind them, shadows in the glow, metal frames distorted by the current. I froze. The lantern trembled in my grip. The light slowed again, stopped for a moment. They seemed to be staring back, waiting. Their beams cut through the dark, pressing against the bank where I stood, and in that silence the river seemed to hold its breath. Then, the lights tilted, both at once, not like headlights bending with the curve, but like eyes, tilting down, searching, and the glow spread across the water until it touched my boots. I stepped back. The mud sucked at my heels. The beams brightened for a second, then blinked out. The river returned to its quiet hum. The fog drifted lower, and I was alone again. But the image stayed burned in my vision. 2 ghostly headlights, waiting beneath the flood. The following days, I tried to convince myself it was a trick. Reflections, passing boats, even the lantern glow bouncing back at me. But every night, the lights came back, moving in silent procession under the drowned road, and each time, they lingered longer, slowing when they reached the bend, pausing as if to let someone in. The old men in the village said the valley once held a crossing, a road that led through the river plain, but it was abandoned after a storm buried it in mud decades ago. They said entire cars were swallowed by the flood, travelers lost, never recovered. I didn't tell them what I had seen, what I still see, that when the water rises, the road returns. Not empty, not forgotten, and that if I stand close enough to the bank, I can hear something beneath the hum of the current. Not words, not engines, just the faint rhythm of wheels turning, rolling endlessly through the water. Sometimes I think, if I stepped forward just once, the headlights would slow. Wait for me. The road is still there tonight, hidden but not gone. And when I close my eyes, I see the pale glow still moving beneath the surface. Cars traveling a path no one remembers, on a road no longer meant for the living, and the river keeps its silence, as though holding the secret close, waiting. It was late autumn. The trees along the riverbank had already let go of most of their leaves. The water moved slowly, dark and heavy, carrying scraps of pale branches with it. The air was thin, cold enough that my breath drifted in front of me like smoke, but still warm enough to walk without gloves. I had followed the river further than I meant to. There was no path anymore, just wet grass, and the faint hum of water folding over stone. That was when I heard it, a tune, soft, almost hidden in the running water. A voice, low and steady, humming something wordless. No rhythm, no words, just a long pull of sound that seemed to vibrate in my chest. I stopped walking. The river seemed quieter, or maybe the hum was louder. Across the bend, I saw someone standing, a figure near the reeds, head bowed, hands resting behind their back. The sound was coming from them, that endless hum. And somehow I felt I already knew the melody. I stayed very still. I didn't want them to notice me. But the strange thing was, I found myself humming too. Without realizing it, my throat opened. The sound slipped out, matching theirs. A perfect echo. My breath carrying notes I didn't recognize, yet somehow remembered. The moment I joined, they turned. Their face was pale, eyes sharp and still, like river stones under ice. And their lips, they didn't move. The hum didn't stop. It filled the air, but their mouth remained closed. A sound too smooth, too deep to come from a throat. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. The melody dragged my voice forward, as though my lungs weren't mine anymore. The stranger stepped closer, their shoes sinking into the mud without a sound. The river curled behind them, bending with the flow. The closer they came, the more the song trembled in my chest, like it wanted to climb out of me, join with theirs. I pressed my hand against my ribs. I could feel it, the vibration of a sound that wasn't my own. The figure smiled. A small, deliberate smile, but the mouth still never opened. Not once. The air thickened. The trees seemed further away. Even the river slowed, as if listening. I tried to look away, but my eyes stayed fixed, pinned to them, like I was no longer standing on the ground at all. When I blinked, they were closer. The distance between us cut in half, though I never saw them move. Their clothes were old, worn fabric, faded threads. The kind of cloth you'd see in a painting, not on anyone alive. I realized my body was trembling, but my voice did not falter. The hum continued, pouring out of me, longer than my lungs should have allowed. It wasn't breath. It was something else. Like the river itself had learned to sing through me. Their eyes never left mine. That smile curved just slightly wider. And I knew I was no longer echoing them. They were echoing me. The thought pressed into my skull like a nail. I tried to stop, to bite down, to silence the song. But the sound swelled louder, vibrating in my teeth, in my spine, in the wet soil beneath me. I staggered back. The mud gave way. Cold water reached my boots. Still I hummed. Still they smiled. I wanted to scream, but no scream would come. Only the song, only the traveler's song. The stranger tilted their head, and for a single heartbeat, their mouth did open, but there was no tongue, no teeth. Only a dark, wet hollow, as though their face was a mask. And the hum didn't pause. It deepened. It swallowed the air. The river churned. Leaves spun in sudden circles. My chest ached, every note clawing at the inside of me. Then, silence. The hum stopped. My voice ended with it. The river stilled again as if nothing had moved at all. I blinked, gasping. The figure was gone. No trace in the reeds. No ripples in the water, only the echo of the melody. Still alive in my skull, I pressed my hands over my ears. But I could hear it, humming through my bones, slow, endless, waiting. And in that quiet, I felt the curve of a smile touch my lips. I didn't open my mouth. But the song continued anyway. The house stood apart, raised on wooden stilts above the slow black current. Its roof sagged, its walls pale with rot. I had watched it for nights, from the far bank, its windows glowing faintly blue as if the water itself had lit a fire inside. No smoke, no movement. Only that glow. I waited until the river quieted, until the frogs ceased their calls, until the air felt too still. Then I crossed. The narrow wooden planks bowed beneath my steps. Below me, the current pressed onward, whispering against the stilts. I reached the door. Its frame leaned, swollen with damp. When I touched the handle, it felt cold as though dipped in the stream below. The door opened without resistance. Inside, only silence. A silence so thick, it clung to the skin. The first thing I noticed was the floor. It was slick, as if the river had been here just moments ago. Each wall dripped, long threads of water sliding down faded paint. The boards groaned, soft with moisture. The house smelled of algae, of drowned wood, of something forgotten beneath the surface. I stepped deeper. The glow from outside still painted the windows. But inside there was no lamp, no flame, only the pale cast of something unseen. My reflection followed me in the glass, distorted, wavering, as if I were standing underwater. The sound came then, not loud, a faint humming. Low, constant, like the breath of the river itself. I froze. It wasn't outside. It came from within the walls. I touched the plaster, wet. It pulsed faintly beneath my palm as though it were breathing back at me. The humming shifted, a higher pitch, almost like voices trying to push through the static. I stepped away. But the floor sagged with me, bowing toward the center of the room. A shallow depression filled with glistening water catching the blue light. I crouched. The surface trembled, though the air above it was still. I thought I saw shapes below, fingers, pale, pressing upward, just beneath the sheen. I stood quickly. My breath caught in my throat. But when I blinked, it was only ripples. The humming had stopped. The silence felt heavier than before. The air grew colder, every window fogged from within. Droplets raced down the glass in crooked lines. I turned back toward the door, but it had swollen shut. Its edges thick with moisture, sealed like bark. The house shifted on its stilts. A long groaning sigh. The water below slapped hard against the beams. I stood still, listening. The silence returned. Only the drip of water down the walls. Only the faint shiver of glass in the wind. The blue glow deepened, gathering in the corners of the room. I felt it brush against me, soft as breath. And then it receded, slipping back into the stillness. The floor dried under my feet. The humming faded completely. Every trace of movement stilled. The house was empty again, quiet, waiting. I pressed my ear to the wall one last time. No hum, no pulse, only the faint memory of water. And something vast just beyond hearing. I stepped back, my hand still damp. The window panes glowed once more, as if nothing had stirred at all. But when I looked closer, the reflection staring back at me wasn't my own. It lingered until I turned away, and even then, I felt its breath follow me out into the night. The river carried on. The house stood still, and the silence never left my chest. The night was pale and still. I remember the way the moonlight slipped through the fog, resting on the river's slow-moving surface. I walked along the dirt path, the one I always took when sleep wouldn't come. The ground was soft beneath my shoes, damp as if it had rained hours earlier. Yet no droplets clung to the leaves. The river kept me company. Its quiet hum ran parallel to my steps. It always had. Until tonight I checked the time. Midnight. Just past it, I thought. But when I looked again, still midnight. I told myself the watch must have stopped. A loose battery. Nothing unusual. I kept walking. My breath curled into the fog. It lingered longer than it should have. The air was colder now. The kind that creeps into your chest. Each inhale, a little heavier. I turned back once, expecting to see the lights of home, the faint outline of the bridge, but the fog had swallowed everything. Even the footprints I was sure I left behind. Gone, as though I had never taken a single step. A rustling came from the reeds near the river. I froze, listened, nothing, only silence. I kept moving. Slower now. Every sound I made felt too loud. The path curved slightly. It always did, and always led back to the main road. Except tonight, the curve didn't end. It stretched on and on. A loop that wasn't a loop. My watch still read midnight. No second hand moving. No passage of time. I tried counting my steps. 100, 200, 3. Still. Midnight. The fog thickened until I could no longer see the river beside me. But I could hear it. The hum had deepened. Lower. Almost like breathing. I told myself it was the current. Just the current. But I quickened my pace. The dirt path beneath me narrowed. Edges crumbled into nothingness. Like the world had been trimmed down to this single trail. I stopped. I whispered into the fog. Hello, no reply. Only the faint echo of my own voice, returning to me from ahead as though something repeated my words. Not quite mine, softer. I wanted to turn back again, but there was nothing behind me, only more fog. My chest tightened. Each breath caught, as if the air itself resisted. The silence grew heavier than the night. Even the river's hum had faded. I was alone. Suspended in this endless walk, I pressed my watch to my ear. No ticking, but a faint static, like a whisper through glass. I couldn't tell if it was inside the watch or inside me. I kept moving, because stopping felt worse, because standing still felt like an invitation. The fog shifted in front of me. Not a breeze, not movement, something passing through. I froze. The path ahead darkened, as though the fog itself leaned closer. Watching, I whispered again. But this time my words didn't return. No echo, only silence. So complete it rang in my ears. I walked faster, shoes striking soft earth. Footsteps, multiplying. One pair became 2, then 3. Close, too close. But when I stopped, they stopped. I pressed my hand to my chest. It was beating, fast, but the world, still midnight. The fog parted for only a moment. And I saw the river again, its surface unmoving, like glass. No current, no hum. Just a black sheet reflecting a pale, endless sky. I leaned closer, searching for my reflection. But there was nothing, only the fog, and the faint outline of the path behind me, stretching away into forever. I took another step. And another. The path never ended. The fog never thinned. And my watch, always midnight. I am still walking, and I don't know if there was ever a way back. The highway was almost empty, just the faint glow of the river to my right. The water moved slowly, catching the pale moonlight in broken flashes. It was close to midnight. The road stretched endlessly. No other cars, no signs of life. I kept my hand steady on the wheel. The hum of the tires against the asphalt was constant, almost comforting, but something pressed at the back of my mind. A weight that hadn't been there before. I glanced at the rearview mirror. For a moment, it flickered. Like static on an old screen, my reflection warped, just slightly. The empty back seat blurred as if the glass itself was vibrating. I thought it was my eyes, the strain of a long drive, but then I felt it, the sense of someone breathing behind me. Not loud, not close, just there, a presence in the shadows. Sitting where the leather always creaked, I didn't move. I couldn't move. I just let the wheel guide itself down the long curve of the highway. The mirror flickered again. White noise danced across it. For less than a second, I thought I saw a shape, a head tilted down, shoulders hunched, hands resting very still. My chest tightened. I told myself not to look back. Not yet. The hum of the road deepened. The engine sounded weaker, as though muffled. Even the river beside me felt quieter. Every instinct begged me to keep driving, to keep my eyes forward. But the silence behind me grew heavy, like a held breath. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry. The air in the car felt damp. Then, the faintest rustle. Leather shifting, the sound of weight pressing into the seat. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, my pulse hammering. The mirror clouded once more, but this time the static stayed. Buzzing softly, I thought about pulling over, throwing the door open and running into the night. But where would I go? The river stretched endlessly. The trees bent toward the road. There was nowhere safe, a soft tap, barely there. Like a finger brushing the glass of the rear window, I forced myself to breathe. Slow, careful. I spoke into the silence. Just one word. Hello? The moment I said it, the static in the mirror cleared. The back seat looked empty again. I almost laughed. The fear felt foolish, but the relief was thin, fragile. Because when my eyes drifted lower, I noticed the door handle. Wet, a single bead of water slid down the chrome. Then another. As though someone had just climbed inside, the river shimmered beside me. The moonlight fractured. I didn't want to turn around, but I did. Slowly, neck stiff, heart pounding, the seat was empty. No figure, no movement, but the dark fabric was damp, soaked, as if it had absorbed the river itself. The smell hit me next. Not rot, not mold, but the sharp metallic scent of cold water. Running water, the kind that clings to stone. I turned forward again, but the windshield seemed narrower. The road darker. In the corner of my eye, something shifted. A ripple across the rear window. I refused to look back again. The wheel shook in my hands. Every mile stretched longer than the last. The silence in the car was no longer empty. It was filled, heavy. I thought I heard another breath. This time closer. At the back of my neck, my skin prickled. Every hair rose. The damp smell surrounded me. Then, nothing. The weight lifted. The mirror cleared. The hum of the tires returned to normal. The night felt like itself again, almost, but the seat behind me never dried. It remained wet. Dripping softly onto the floor, I drove on, the road bending into the distance. The pale reflection of the river keeping me company, and every so often, I still feel it. The passenger I never see, waiting, silent, in the back seat. The river was swollen that night. The air was heavy with autumn damp clinging to my coat, pressing against my skin. A faint fog drifted along the edges of the water, curling around the trees like pale fingers. I remember the hush, Even the insects seemed to quiet themselves, leaving only the low hum of the current below. That's when I saw the bridge. Wooden. Long. Its narrow planks stretched across the water, sagging slightly in the middle, as though tired from holding its shape. A rope railing dangled loosely, swaying with the faintest breeze. I hesitated. Something about it felt wrong. But the fog was thick, and the path led straight toward it, as if guiding me there. The first step creaked, soft but sharp in the silence. The second step followed, then the third. The boards bowed beneath my weight, but they held. The smell of damp wood rose with every shift. The sound of the river blurred beneath me, a constant murmur hidden under the slow groan of the bridge. And I walked. Halfway across, I stopped. I don't know why. Perhaps it was the way the fog parted, showing me nothing on either side. Just water stretching wider than it should. The river felt endless, as though the land had disappeared behind me. I placed my hand on the rope. It was wet, frayed. Fibers clung to my palm. And in that stillness, I felt a faint vibration, as though something, somewhere, was walking the same steps I was. I didn't turn back. I didn't look down. I just kept moving, breath shallow, until the dark shape of the far bank slowly appeared through the mist. When I stepped onto solid ground, I exhaled. The earth felt different, steadier, heavier. Behind me, the bridge swayed, almost sighing with relief. That night I dreamed of water, of endless wood planks stretching into fog, of footsteps that didn't belong to me. When morning came, I retraced my walk. The fog was gone. The sun filtered weakly through bare branches, but when I reached the river, the path simply ended. The water ran fast, cold, unbroken. There was no bridge. Not even a trace of one. I thought I was mistaken, that I had turned the wrong way. But the landmarks were the same. The leaning oak, the moss on the stones. It was the same path. Still there was nothing. Only rushing water where the bridge had been. I asked around in the village. The locals gave me puzzled looks, then pitying ones. One older man finally spoke. His voice was low, almost a whisper. The bridge collapsed. Years ago, he said. Storm took it. No one's crossed there since. I laughed softly, though my throat felt tight. I had crossed it just last night. The wood was beneath me, the ropes against my palm. I could still feel the sway in my legs, but he only shook his head. He told me of the flood, of the families who never returned from that crossing, of how the river took more than just wood. I didn't argue. I just listened. His eyes lingered on me, searching as though he already knew what I'd done, what I'd felt. That evening I returned again. The air was colder, the water darker. No bridge revealed itself, and yet, when I closed my eyes, I could hear it. The creak, the breath of rope pulling taut, the hollow space between one step and the next. My shoes still carried traces of mud from its boards. And in the silence of my room, I could still feel the subtle give of wood beneath me, as if the bridge had followed me home. Now, when I pass the river, I never look directly at it, but I always hear the hum. And my feet remember the rhythm, step after step, across a bridge that was never there. Sometimes I wonder, if I went back on the right kind of night in the right kind of fog, would it appear again? And if it did, would I be able to leave it behind a second time? Because in the quiet I feel it calling, a soft creak, a faint sway, and the weight of something waiting just out of sight. I tell myself not to listen, but the boards still bend beneath my every step. It was late. The kind of late where the air feels heavier than it should. I walked the path back to the bend in the river. The grass was damp, soft beneath my boots, as if it had been waiting for me. The lantern swung in my hand, a pale circle of light on the dirt. The fog pressed close, curling around my arms, curling around my breath. They always said the river was patient, but patience can feel like hunger if you stand still long enough. I could hear the current before I saw it. A low hum, like something whispering just below the surface. The trees leaned over the bank, skeletal in the dim glow. Their branches dipped into the mist, trembling as if they too were listening. Every story I had followed led back here. Every warning, every disappearance, every soft voice in the night. And tonight, it felt like the river knew my name. I set the lantern down at the edge of the bank. Its light caught the ripples, black water moving without end. The fog thickened. It was no longer drifting. It was standing, a wall of pale silence between me and the rest of the world. I remembered the old man's words, that the bend doesn't just take what falls into it. It waits. I tried to steady my breathing, but the rhythm of the current pulled at it. Inhale, exhale, never in sync with me. The soil beneath my boots gave a little, soft, wet, pulling me closer. I wanted to step back. I didn't. Something shifted across the surface. Not driftwood, not foam, it was shape. Rising slowly, breaking the water without a sound, I froze. The air carried no nightbirds, no insects, only the river. The surface formed into a pale outline, not a figure, not yet. Just the impression of one. The fog swirled tighter, binding me to the bank. My lantern flickered, as though it too wanted to be gone. I felt a pressure in my chest. Not fear, not quite. It was the quiet weight of being seen. The surface split further, and something like a face tilted toward me, not eyes, not a mouth, but the suggestion of them. Shadows pulled into place by the water. My breath stilled. The current grew louder. Almost a chant. I knew I should step back. Run even, but the river waited. And I had always come back to it. The stories weren't warnings. They were invitations. The pale shape rose higher, as if it carried the weight of all the names ever lost here. And in the moment I thought it would reach the bank, it stopped. The water held it there. Still, breathing in rhythm, I could feel inside my ribs. My hand twitched toward the lantern. The flame shook. I thought the light would matter, but it didn't. The river didn't care for fire or heat or steel. It only cared for stillness, for waiting. The fog pressed against my back now. No path behind me, just the bend. The water, the silence. I closed my eyes. The chant of the current filled me. It wasn't words, but I understood them. This was not the end of me. Not yet. This was the pause before. The moment the river measures. When I opened my eyes again, the pale outline was gone. The water had smoothed, the current slow, almost gentle. The fog loosened, drifting back into the trees. And I felt lighter, not safe. Never safe, but accepted. The lantern's flame steadied. Its circle of light small, trembling, but mine again. I didn't move. I couldn't, because the bend in the river wasn't empty. It was full. Always full. And tonight, I had only seen the surface. The hum faded to a low breath. The water carried on, patient. I picked up the lantern and turned away. My footsteps soft on the damp grass, but I knew some part of me would never leave the bank. Some part of me would always be waiting there with the river, in the fog, where silence feels like a voice, where the water watches back.